Okay, we're live. And I'll make you a co-host as I usually do.
Okay.
Just in case. John Chumo emailed me. He's not going to make it, so
Okay.
hopefully others show up. I've got a little PowerPoint just with the highlights of each of the proposals that I'll run through.
Okay.
Hey, Ron,
Hey, Art.
isn't a council doing strategic planning tonight?
They have a meeting at 7. So if we get done before then, you're welcome to hop over to that meeting.
No, thanks.
Yeah, Chris McNally is going to be the solicitor for us tonight because Peter has to be ready for that meeting.
Can you hear me?
Hi, BJ.
Hi. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Kung Hei Fat Choi, said
What?
in Chinese, of
Oh.
course. Maybe that's the wrong thing to say during this pandemic, though. I learned that when I lived in Hong Kong. There. There we go.
BJ, I thought that meant you wanted some more lo mein.
Oh, well, it depends. I've already had my Chinese food at New Year's.
Hello all.
Hi, Paul.
Has everyone recovered from yesterday?
Oh,
I'm tired. I stayed up too late watching TV last night.
I know.
I didn't get any sleep last night. I was so distraught.
It's kind of hard to stop watching. I mean, it's just so riveting.
Like we at least have a quorum, so that's good. So Paul, I've got a brief PowerPoint for each of the proposals.
Great.
Actually, the first one is just one slide because it's pretty short, and then the second one I've got a few slides. So I figured I can run through the highlights and then stop after the first one for discussion and public input, and then move on to the next one, if that makes sense.
It's fine with me. I'll introduce it and turn it right over to you and you can run it the way you wish, Ron.
Okay. Like I said, it's just sort of a summary of the highlights just to get the conversation started.
Good. Sounds good. John will not be here this evening. Is anyone else not able to attend? Ron, do you know?
I haven't heard from anyone else.
So I see 4. So we're waiting for Joe and Bill.
Bill.
Yeah.
Now, both these are public hearings, correct?
Public workshop.
It's a workshop. It's
Yep.
It's more of an informal thing. It's not a
Mhm.
formal public hearing.
Yeah.
So
We don't need a motion to do a workshop, do we? No.
no.
Is Joe.
We have a few minutes. Hopefully Bill will be able to make it.
Well, I have about 2+ minutes to 6. So when I get to 6, we'll open the meeting.
Right.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, hi, Paul. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
So Chris McNally is filling in for Peter Regan tonight because Peter's got to cover the council meeting, I believe, at 7. Is that right, Chris?
I honestly, I couldn't answer the second half of that, but I was
So you-
requested to attend and cover
Peter?
this one.
You don't know why you were
So-
drafted?
I do not. I am often voluntold what to do, and here I am.
Well, welcome, Chris.
Yeah, welcome. Good to see you all.
It is 7 o'clock and they're doing strategic planning.
Hmm.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's for the town council's sort of their work plan for the next 2 years. That's what they'll be talking about at 7 o'clock.
Aha.
Yeah, maybe they can catch up on the plan from 2 years ago that they still haven't answered us.
Uh,
Mike,
excuse me, I'm currently looking at the November 30th that was sent from Ron. Is that one of the things that we're going to be discussing?
We've got 2 things on the agenda. So
Yeah.
actually, why don't we wait till Paul opens the meeting? We've got like 1 minute to go and then
Okay,
I'll
I
give.
just wanted to know if we were going to refer to that because it's so well done.
Oh, thank you. I don't have anything dated November 30th, but that doesn't mean it's just not an earlier version of what we have for
Yeah,
tonight.
this is the ordinance amending the town code, rules and regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land.
No, these are zoning items tonight.
Oh, all right. I like that one very much.
Okay, I have 6 PM. So I will open the meeting. This is a special public workshop meeting to consider 2 modifications to town ordinances.
Hey, Lee. Can you turn the TV off? Turn the TV off. You're disturbing the meeting.
You want to see your cats?
Sorry about
First
that.
item, the first item on the agenda, review and provide recommendation to the town council on potential amendments to zoning ordinance, section 306, regarding development plan review, uses subject to and exempt from development plan review. Ron, the floor is yours.
So what I'm going to do is start sharing my screen, I hope.
Ron, before you
Yep.
start, can you let us know about how many members of the public are on in the meeting?
We have 1
One?
so far. Maybe
Yeah.
some will join us.
Yeah.
So when you, actually, this is
Oh,
a good
Ron,
question.
I have to take attendance. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
Right. Apologize for that. We have to take attendance by roll call. And remember, all votes will be done by voice roll call. So for attendance, Mr. Pyrick,
Present.
Mr. Chumo is absent, Mrs. Owen,
Here,
Mr. Weber,
Present.
Mr. Fenton,
Here.
Mr. Nash. And I am here. Hopefully Bill will show up in a little bit.
Yep.
Sorry, Ron, go ahead.
That's all right. So I will try to do this here. All right. I assume you all can see the full screen now?
Yes.
Right.
Full screen version of the
Yes.
slides.
Looks good, Ron.
Great, thank you. Rita, if you wouldn't mind, while you're taking notes, if you could just keep a watch on the attendees list to see if Bill shows up, or I guess that's all we're waiting for.
Okay, no problem.
And you should be able to let him or promote him to a panelist.
Yep.
Okay, so as we started to discuss, we've got a couple of items on the agenda tonight that are both proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance that are before the planning board for consideration of a recommendation to the town council. The first item, as Paul just read, is relating to section 306 of the development plan review, which is the development plan review section of the zoning ordinance. It addresses uses that are subject to and exempt from development plan review.
Could you slide over a little bit to the left? Some of the writing is cut out by the pictures of us.
I'm gonna hide you guys. Is that better?
No,
No. You can minimize the attendees.
I just did that on my end. Art, maybe on your end, you can minimize the people's pictures. I can't do it from my end. So I'm just going to run through the highlights again. These particular amendments for this first item were changes that are being requested by the planning board itself, as opposed to something that was brought to us or a part of the comp plan. These are items that the planning board has asked that the town consider making changes in the zoning ordinance. And again, it's relative to the uses that are going to be required to go through development plan review. So you can read the bullet point yourself, but basically it would, whereas now the regulations or the zoning ordinance talks about the building and zoning official being the person that determines what projects that he gets would go through development plan review, and that's in consultation with the town planner. It was requested that that be revised to make the town planner the person that would make that determination after reviewing applications that come in to determine with the building officials that, input and participation, the projects that would go through the full development plan review process. So it's basically just a change in who makes that determination. In terms of the types of projects that would go through development plan review, currently facade alterations are not required to go through full development plan review. Such changes currently are required to get waivers if they are not meeting the design requirements of our commercial design standards, such as for exterior building materials and windows and that sort of thing. The proposed change would require any structural alterations to a facade that those go through the full development plan review process, which would ensure that the planning board would have more of a sort of a breadth of review that it would do in those cases. Right now, you would only see those facade alterations, as I said, if a waiver from one of the design standards is being requested. So I know that that's been an issue or an item of concern with some recent applications that have come through. So any facade alterations except for minor repairs or replacement of existing siding and painting would require full DPR. So basically any structural modifications to the facade of the building would trigger full development plan review. And as I said, waivers would still, as always, require the planning board approval. And then the third major component of this first item on the agenda is regarding screening of rooftop equipment. So as you all know, under the current requirements through the development plan review process, any new projects, whether it's an addition to an existing building or significant modifications to an existing building or a new building, rooftop equipment needs to be screened. So we've seen that happen on existing buildings in recent times, and then also on new buildings where that's been required. But there are cases where, for example, if it was a project that the planning board would see for a waiver request for exterior materials, there's no provision, because it's not going through development plan review, there's no provision to require that existing building to be or to provide screening of any existing rooftop equipment. So this change would require that basically any project that requires permitting, building permits, development plan review, waivers, and of course most anything that you do to a building is going to require a building permit. If there is rooftop equipment or rooftop equipment is proposed, that equipment must be screened as part of that project, whether it's a simple building permit or a full review, full development plan review. So those are the three major components of this first agenda item. I think, I'll stop sharing my screen now so that we can see each other.
Ron, can you lead those up for just a minute?
Yep, hold on.
I just want to make one comment.
Yep.
The first bullet is being requested to avoid the possible appearance of a conflict of interest, since any decision that is made is appealed to the zoning board, where the building official has a presence and strong influence on that. Second item is essentially being requested because we've had a number of cases come through where the facade was altered, but all that was being requested was a waiver to use certain siding materials, and the facade really did not comply with the vision of the comprehensive plan. So we requested this change. And the third one, as you know, is in there to make sure that every time rooftop equipment is used, it is screened. Right now, as Ryan mentioned, it's only when it's a full DPR that it gets addressed. So with that, any comments from members of the planning board before we open this up? Joe?
So one of my comments is regarding the rooftop screening of the rooftop equipment. So if a tenant moves out of a small unit in like a plaza where there's multiple tenants, and a new tenant comes in, and the landlord has to secure a building permit to move that new tenant in, electrical, plumbing, whatever. Does that open the individual up to having to screen rooftop equipment, because you're in for a building permit, for a 2,000-foot tenant in a 50,000-foot plaza?
So the way that the revision is worded, and I don't know if you have your draft handy, but
I do.
It's
Yep.
page 2, right in the middle of
Okay.
the page, screening of rooftop equipment. It says when a building permit is requested for exterior renovation
Okay.
or other alteration. So if it was strictly interior work, then
Yeah.
no, that wouldn't
All right.
wouldn't apply.
Okay. Thank you for
Sure.
clearing that up. I was hopeful that was the case.
Other
And
comments from
if that
members?
wasn't the case, Joe, I would have suggested that we make that change. But yeah, that's the way
Okay.
it's
Thank
done.
you, Ron.
I have a question.
Go ahead, BJ.
Yeah, my question is on antennas, like TV antennas or things like that. Is that applicable at all, or does that have nothing to do with this?
Antennas are usually exempt from
Okay.
things like height limits and that sort of thing. And I would expect that it would be the same in this situation.
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Art?
Well, I guess I've got a simple question because we discovered it last meeting. How did the YMCA put that equipment on a roof and not have it screened properly? How did that slip through the crack?
Because we haven't yet adopted this amendment. That's how. It was one of those situations where they were not required to come through the development plan review process to put that equipment on the roof, and therefore we didn't see anything. And
Okay.
through the building permit process, they're not required to do it. So this amendment would change that.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Other comments from members of the planning board? Do any members of the public wish to comment?
We have one member of the public present, and if he wishes to make comment, raise the hand. You're able to raise your hand with the button in the app. And it doesn't appear that a hand is being raised.
Okay. So is this at the point, Ron, where we can finalize the draft and send it to the town council?
Yes, actually, that's what I was expecting to happen tonight. You know, if there are any amendments that need to be made, we can certainly do that. If the draft is acceptable the way it is, then you can simply vote to forward it to the town council with a positive recommendation, recognizing that there's going to be further review during that process with the town council through public hearing and additional solicitor review. I will say that the solicitor, Peter, reviewed both of the items that are on the agenda tonight. So he's at least preliminarily signed off on both of these, but there'll be another crack at, you know, further modifying and tweaking these as it gets through the town council process.
Sure. May I have a motion for a favorable recommendation to the town council on this
So moved.
change? BJ made the motion,
Second.
seconded by Art. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Pirrick,
Aye.
Mrs. Owen,
Aye.
Mr. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Fenton,
Aye.
and has Bill come in?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, and I vote aye, so the motion passes.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda, item 2, is a review and provide recommendations to the town council on proposed amendments to the Middletown zoning ordinance, proposed Article 27B, to regulate the installation and use of outdoor lighting per comprehensive plan action item N-V.C.1. Ron?
So I will go back to sharing my screen now. And this slide, oh, there we go. Okay, so this item, as referenced in the agenda, is a directly comes out of the comprehensive plan. There's language, and in the memo that I provided to the board for tonight's meeting, that language is identified that talks about encouraging proper lighting and enhancing the town's regulations relative to exterior lighting. And the action item, I'm not going to read all of the language from the comp plan, but just the action item says that the town should consider regulations on outdoor lighting to limit night sky light pollution and glare. So that's sort of the basis. And you know, this goes back a few years when we were identifying all of the zoning items in the comp plan that needed to be addressed. And this is one of those items that we're getting around to now. So I'll run through the slides again, just sort of the highlights. And this is a much longer proposal. This would be a new article in the zoning ordinance, at least at this point proposed as Article 27B. Therefore it is longer than the last item because it's not changing something that exists. It's basically a full new section of the zoning ordinance. But I'll run through the highlights and then we can have some discussion. So the proposed criteria for use of outdoor lighting includes requiring the use of fully shielded fixtures and fixtures that are approved by the International Dark Sky Association. That's something that we do already, and through our development plan review process, at least we do that. By writing this into the zoning ordinance, all lighting, whether it goes through the development plan review process or not, all lighting that's installed would have to comply with that standard. Light sources would have to use a warm lamp correlated color temperature. A lot of technical jargon here. That basically means it's not as bright a light. It's not as much in the blue spectrum, which you've probably heard about the blue spectrum being the light that causes a lot of glare. So that's what that's about. And I should also stop and mention that Rita did all of the research on this as we normally do. We rely on her to do a lot of the grunt work, to comb through some existing ordinances from elsewhere, and that's what she's done in this case. So this is a lot of research that went into drafting this ordinance. Next item is fixtures must be aimed and shielded to ensure no glare that would adversely impact motorists and bicyclists. Again, that's language that we have currently in our commercial design standards, but this would get it into the zoning ordinance. The illumination projected onto abutting residential uses should not exceed 0.1 foot candle. And then for abutting commercial uses, it should not exceed 1 foot candle. For commercial properties, outdoor lighting must be extinguished 30 minutes after closing. And there is language in the draft. I didn't note it on the slide here, but it does allow for security lighting. So regarding security lighting, it does state that motion sensor lighting is preferred, so that lighting is not necessarily left on all night. But if there is security lighting that's necessary, the preference is that it be on a motion sensor. For multifamily and mixed-use properties, outdoor lighting must be extinguished by 11 p.m. or 30 minutes after the business closing, whichever is later. Where you've got a mixed-use property with multifamily or a multifamily project alone, obviously there are people coming and going at all hours, so lighting would be allowed to stay on basically all night to light walkways and parking areas. Fixtures are limited to 20 feet above ground, which I think that might be our current regulation in the design standards. Administration of the program, basically where is this applicable? Single family and 2-family residential are not required to go through they're not required to go through the process necessarily of review, but they are encouraged to comply with the requirements to limit the impact on abutters. So it's not going to be as thorough a review, but when they come in, if they come in, and many of this lighting stuff isn't going to apply in a residential situation anyway in terms of permitting. But if they do need to get a permit, electrical permit, it'll be looked at to ensure that to the greatest extent possible, it's meeting the criteria. Lighting plans must be submitted to the planning board or building official, as applicable, as part of the application for the development. And again, this is going to apply to subdivisions, multifamily projects, mixed-use projects, and commercial projects. Plans must include the location and type of lighting fixtures and an analysis of the intensity of the light on and off the site. Again, you're familiar with the development plan review process. We do require that the location and the types of fixtures be provided. Oftentimes, although this isn't currently required, we'll get that photometric type of plan, which identifies on the property and on abutting properties the level of light that's expected to spill on to those abutting properties and the level of light on the property. But this ordinance would require that those be submitted in for all applications where this provision is going to be applicable. Safety concerns and nuisance glare must be addressed when brought to the owner's attention. So the zoning ordinance states, or the draft states, that if something is brought to the town, a concern is raised, the town will contact the owner and that issue must be resolved. And then as far as any non-conforming lighting, and of course, as a zoning ordinance amendment, non-conformity is allowed to continue. I mean, that applies to all most zoning ordinance amendments. Any non-conformities that result from that change in zoning are allowed to continue. And there's wording in this draft that non-conforming lighting must be brought into conformance when the fixture is replaced or when there's a change of use of the property. So that would be the opportunity. Fixtures don't last forever. uses may be there for a long time, but fixtures don't last forever. So that's the opportunity when a fixture needs to be replaced, that it would be in compliance with the design criteria. And then this is just a chart, and I think it's attached to the draft I sent out. I don't know that this ends up getting into the zoning ordinance. I don't know that that would be the proper place to put this, but this is just an example of some fixtures that we often see as being compliant with the requirements, being shielded lighting that's directed to the ground, and not adversely impacting night sky, pollution, and abutting property owners and streets with glare. So that's just I guess a very quick summary of what's in this draft. So again, it's a longer draft, and hopefully you've had a chance to read through it. But I can certainly try to answer any questions, and of course Rita might be able to do a better job than I could at answering some of the questions.
First of all, Rita, thank you for your work on this. Appreciate it very much. I have a question.
Sure.
If the last page that has the figures of appropriate types of lighting
Yeah.
is not inserted in the ordinance, how would it be available to applicants?
I think we would probably have it as a handout, I guess. So when folks go into the building inspector's office, if they're just seeking electrical permits, or if they come into my office and they're starting the development plan review process, it can be something that we can provide to them. We do have, I guess, the ability to add it into some of our existing documents, like the development, commercial development design standards. But again, that only applies to those certain types of projects. So maybe just as a separate handout that we could make available to folks.
Is that workable from your perspective, Ron?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, that's easy
Okay.
enough.
okay, comments and questions from members of the planning board? Art?
Well, I guess my first question is, do we currently have, I would say, an audit of lighting in the town? And what I'm thinking about primarily are the bigger commercial places, the car dealers. I know there's a lot of complaints that the lights at Gaudet School are kept on very late, etc. So do we, so that's my basic question. Do
Yeah,
we
no,
basic-
there's no comprehensive audit or inventory of existing lighting in town. Issues like you just mentioned with the school lights being on late, those get addressed on a case by case, call by call basis. When a complaint comes in, it gets addressed. For business properties, again, given that we don't have an ordinance in place right now, there's really nothing aside from a safety issue or a glare issue, something that's causing a hazard. Those can be addressed, but without the ordinance in place, there's really nothing to require those businesses that might not be complying with our current commercial design standards to bring their lighting into conformance, unless and until they were to come through with a new development proposal. So at least with this, it's not perfect in that you can't, or we're not proposing that we're going to require existing business properties to replace all of their lighting to be in compliance. But it does have that provision that when the lighting needs to be replaced, when it's at the end of its life, it will have to be brought into compliance.
Okay, thanks.
Ron, is that something that if this becomes an ordinance, we can take up at that point?
What do you mean? What did you want to
Well,
take up?
if this becomes an ordinance and we now have the lighting ordinance in place,
Yep.
is doing what Art suggested something we can discuss at that point?
Doing an inventory or doing something more than that?
No, taking an inventory of current lighting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I don't know that it helps us necessarily with the regulatory aspect because, like I said, we're not proposing we're going to require folks that aren't
Yeah.
doing anything to, but it might be helpful to have that just as a reference.
Yeah.
So that when when we see applications come through, we perhaps have pre-flagged those properties as being a property that needs to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, just to be aware of what we have in the town.
Sure. Yep, we can talk about that.
Any other comments from members of the board? BJ?
Yes, I was wondering if it might be possible to make the verbiage a bit more condensed, so it could be more quickly read, rather than reading the ands, are, or the ands and ors and the whatever.
I'll let
possible?
Chris talk to that, because I think a lot of those ands and ors and whatnots and what fors are
Oh, would that be a
legalese
legalese?
that we need to have in the ordinance.
And don't blame Peter, Chris.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, not having drafted it, I did read through it, and I understand that it's lengthier than the other ordinance, but there are a lot of things that they're correlated and if and or but. And so I think we have to leave it as it is. But as
Okay.
Ron said earlier, there is another crack at this coming up after it's presented. There may be some opportunity for condensing it a little bit, but I'm not in a spot to say that we can definitely cut out sections or anything of that sort. But we might be able to make it a little bit easier to read in sort of more plain English. But
Yes.
chances are a lot of that terminology is going to have to remain.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
So am I to understand that like say if a commercial place wanted to do some upgrading of their lighting, they would have to draw a permit, and that would have to come before us to get approved, or the zoning board or something like that?
It wouldn't necessarily have to go before a board, but they would have to comply with the zoning ordinance, with the criteria.
Okay. Now, is there specific language in the ordinance about motion sensor lights?
Reed, I don't know if you recall, I know I just read through it this morning, and I reminded myself that we had that provision in there regarding security lighting, that it doesn't say it's required, but I think it says the preference is that the security lighting be motion sensor, again, to try to cut down on the amount of light that's out there in the middle of the night if it's not necessary.
Right. Wow.
And then, so that's the security lighting. And then, of course, it does talk about other lighting for commercial businesses being turned off after the business closes. So, the parking lot lights and whatever other lighting they might have on the site, that would go off at a point in time during the night. And then security lighting would be permitted, but again, the preference would be that the security lighting be on a motion sensor.
Other comments from members of the board? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment?
Again, if you have any questions or comments from the public, just raise your hand using the button in the app.
Sorry, I was just trying to find the exact language. It says after hour security lighting, when after hour security lighting is required, the use of motion sensor controlled lighting is encouraged.
Okay.
It's a good word.
So I have nobody raising their hand, Paul.
No one raising their hand? Okay. Is the action here the same as on the first item, that we make a favorable recommendation to the town council?
That's right.
So moved.
BJ made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Art. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Pyrick,
Aye.
Mrs. Owen,
Aye.
Mr. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Fenton,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion passes. We have one other item on the agenda tonight.
Yep.
And that is the formation of a subcommittee to work with Ron and Steve Cabral to prioritize recommendations for implementing recommendations on the impact study. And these should be sent to the town council. If you are interested in serving on this subcommittee, please raise your hand so I can see it.
Would you clarify which study you're talking about?
This is the Water and Traffic Impact Study. The one done by Crossman Engineering for the,
Right, okay,
looking
got
at looking at the impact of full build out.
I'll sign up.
So, okay, so let's have the subcommittee be Joe, Mike, and Art. And Joe, are you willing to chair the subcommittee?
Sure.
I wish to point out that we made a commitment to the town council to have these prioritized recommendations sent to them within 90 days. So I think what the subcommittee should do is plan to have a list of prioritized recommendations to the planning board for our March meeting at the latest. I also encourage you to look at the memo that was sent to the town council, which suggested categories for prioritization. I think they would work, but you can decide amongst yourselves. Ron, you can set up meetings for these. Even though I'm not on the subcommittee, would you copy me on that, please?
Sure, I can let everybody know when they're scheduled. There's no, I'm going to post the meetings anyway, so there's no limit in terms of the number of members that can show up. I'll post it so that there won't be an issue with the notice requirement.
Okay,
So
very good.
anybody would be welcome to sit in.
Okay.
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 Hey, Ron, can you just email me that memo that went to the planning board in case
Sure.
I don't have it handy?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
And I'll reach out to the 3 subcommittee members, and I also need to get in touch with Steve to see what his availability is, but we'll try to get something scheduled pretty quickly.
Okay, would we meet at town hall and distance? Could we do it that way around a table?
I think we'd still be Zoom.
What's wrong with trying to do it at a table 6 feet apart?
Because as a posted public meeting, you have to let the public attend. And the only way you can let the public attend at this point in time is virtually. So even if we were all sitting around a table 6 feet apart, we'd have to figure out some way to get it onto Zoom and then be able to interact, or at least allow the public to see what's going on and hear the conversation. So I think it's easier just to go the way we've been doing it.
Yeah, I know. I hate it's so clumsy. I hate it.
Not long to go, hopefully.
Not forever.
Well, once we get our shots, at least we got a head start on something. If we never get our shots.
While I have you here, Joe, have you had your conversations with the town engineer about Lower Aquidneck? Your thoughts on Lower
I
Aquidneck?
have not, and it's on my agenda. I gotta do that.
All right, anything else to come before the meeting?
I would like, excuse me.
BJ?
Yeah, I would like to again compliment Ron for sending out the November 30th discussion potential amendments to the regulations regarding subdivision. And this is about the conservation development, et cetera. And I thought it was very well done and very interesting. So I wanted to compliment Ron on it, and hopefully we all still have it.
Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, there's a public meeting on the future of the airport, I guess specifically the Middletown Airport there on January 12th. I think it's.
Really?
I mean, we were working on some issues related to that, last year. So I don't know, Joe, do you see that as being interesting, or maybe something we should pay attention to?
Absolutely.
We were not told anything about it.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, likewise.
It was posted on the town website. I can get you the link for the meeting. It's of course going to be a Zoom meeting.
Please. Yeah.
It's really, the town isn't necessarily attending the meeting as a participant, but it's open to the public. And I'm planning to listen in just to hear what they have to say. I think it's going to be more of a presentation by RIAC about their ongoing process to try to, promote business at all the general aviation airports. And I think they're just updating folks as to where they are with that process. But I'll send out the link right after this meeting.
Can I throw something in about the airport?
Go ahead, Art.
I had somebody call me up the other day and said there might be a proposal coming for the town to actually buy the Newport Airport and convert it into an Amazon drone base. So I just put that out there. So watch out.
Get the rumors
You
started.
mentioned that one of the things they mentioned about the airport is it's the second busiest airport in Rhode Island. I saw that in the advertisement.
Look, the positive side, you get your drone packages in about 10 minutes,
Any other business for the planning board? May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second,
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. Mr. Pirek,
Aye.
Mrs. Owen,
Aye.
Mr. Weber,
aye.
Mr. Fenton.
Aye.
I vote aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, folks. Have a
Thanks,
good
Happy New
night.
Year to all of you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See you
Thank
next